The rancher made his son pick a bride, and he chose the orphan stable girl. The Callaway ranch stretched farther than the eye could see. In the early morning, when the sun rose slowly over the hills, the land looked golden and peaceful. The wind moved gently through the tall grass, and the horses in the fields lifted their heads as if greeting the day. It was a place built with years of effort, patience, and strong will. Thomas Callaway stood on the wooden porch of the large ranch house, holding a cup of black coffee in his rough hands. His face was lined from years of working under the sun. He was not a man who spoke much about feelings, but everything about him showed strength and discipline. He had built the ranch from almost nothing. When he was young, he had only a small piece of land and a few cattle. Through hard work and smart decisions, he slowly turned it into one of the most respected ranches in the county. For Thomas, the ranch was not just land. It was his life's work. It was proof that effort and determination could build something lasting. And now, as he grew older, one thought stayed in his mind more than anything else: who would carry it forward? Inside the house, Ethan Callaway was finishing his breakfast. Unlike his father, Ethan's face still carried the softness of youth, though he had already spent years working alongside ranch hands. He understood cattle, machinery, and land management. He woke early and worked late. No one could say he was lazy. But there was something different about him. Where Thomas was firm and commanding, Ethan was calm and thoughtful. Ethan respected his father deeply. He knew how much sacrifice had gone into building the ranch. But sometimes he felt the weight of expectations pressing heavily on his shoulders. From a young age, he had been told that everything around him would one day be his responsibility. The barns, the fields, the workers, the reputation, everything. That morning, Thomas called him out to the porch. "Sit," Thomas said firmly, though not unkindly. Ethan pulled out a chair and sat across from his father. He noticed the serious look in Thomas's eyes. "You're not a boy anymore," Thomas began. "The ranch needs stability. It needs a future." Ethan nodded slowly. He had heard similar words before. Thomas continued, "If you are going to inherit this land, you need a wife, a strong partner, someone from a good family, someone who understands ranch life and carries respect." The words hung in the air. Ethan felt his chest tighten slightly. He had expected this conversation one day, but hearing it made everything feel real. Marriage was not something he had taken lightly. He believed it should come from understanding and trust, not just arrangement. Thomas leaned back in his chair. "Next Saturday, I've invited 3 families to visit. Their daughters are suitable, educated, raised properly. It's time you choose." Choose. The word felt heavy. Ethan did not argue. He rarely argued with his father, but inside questions formed. Could feelings be decided in a single evening? Could a life partner be selected like livestock at an auction? He pushed the thought aside. He knew his father believed he was doing what was best. Later that day, the ranch buzzed with quiet gossip. Word spread quickly among the workers that important guests were coming. The house staff began preparing guest rooms. The cook planned a large dinner. Everything had to look perfect. While the big house filled with movement, the stables remained steady and calm. That was where Lily Harper spent most of her time. Lily had arrived at the ranch years ago with a small suitcase and hopeful eyes. She had lost her parents at a young age and moved between distant relatives who struggled to support her. By 16, she knew she needed to stand on her own feet. When she heard that the Callaway Ranch needed extra help in the stables, she did not hesitate. From her first day, she worked quietly and carefully. She spoke gently to the horses and listened more than she talked. She never asked for special treatment and never complained. Over time, even the toughest ranch hands began to respect her dedication. That afternoon, Ethan walked toward the stables, trying to clear his thoughts. The scent of hay and leather felt comforting. Inside, he saw Lily brushing down a chestnut horse. The animal stood calmly under her steady hands. "You're going to make him shine brighter than the sun," Ethan said with a small smile. Lily glanced up, slightly surprised but smiling back. He deserves it. He worked hard today. Ethan leaned against the wooden fence, watching her. There was something peaceful about the way she worked. She treated every task with care, no matter how small. "You heard about Saturday?" he asked. Lily paused for just a second before nodding. "Everyone has." There was no bitterness in her voice, just simple acknowledgement. "My father thinks it's time," Ethan said quietly. Lily returned her focus to the horse. "Your father always thinks ahead." Ethan studied her expression. It gave nothing away. She had learned long ago how to protect her feelings. As someone who grew up without steady support, she understood not to expect too much from life. In the distance, workers repaired fences and checked equipment, preparing the ranch to look its best. 3 young women would soon arrive, dressed in fine clothes, raised in comfort, carrying family names that matched the Calloway reputation. Lily was different. She owned little more than a few simple dresses and worn boots. She had no family name that carried influence. She had no land waiting to be inherited, but she had strength. That evening, as the sun dipped low, Ethan stayed longer in the stables than usual. He watched how Lily calmed a nervous colt that refused to eat. She didn't force it. She didn't raise her voice. She simply stayed close until the animal trusted her. Ethan felt something stir inside him, not sudden excitement but quiet admiration. Back at the house, Thomas reviewed details for the upcoming visit. He imagined Ethan standing beside a confident young woman from a respected ranching family. It would secure alliances, strengthen business ties, protect everything he had built. For Thomas, love was not the foundation of marriage. Partnership and legacy were. As night fell, the ranch grew quiet. Stars filled the wide sky. Ethan stood alone near the fence line, staring out at the land that would one day be his responsibility. He understood his father's reasoning. Stability mattered. Reputation mattered. But somewhere deep inside, he wondered whether the heart should matter too. Inside the small room above the stables, Lily sat by her window. She could see the lights from the big house glowing warmly in the distance. She knew her place in the world was different from those who would soon arrive. She had accepted that long ago. Yet she could not ignore the quiet feeling in her chest whenever Ethan smiled at her or lingered nearby. Saturday was coming quickly. The ranch would shine. The guests would arrive, and Ethan would be expected to choose. None of them knew that this single decision would begin to change the future of the Calloway Ranch forever. Saturday arrived with clear skies and a soft golden sunrise that made the ranch look almost magical. The house staff had been awake since early morning, polishing windows, arranging fresh flowers, and preparing a meal big enough to impress even the strictest guests. The air carried a quiet excitement, mixed with nervous energy. Thomas Calloway stood in the main hallway, checking every detail. He wore his best coat and boots that had been polished until they shone. His posture was straight, his expression serious. Today was important. Today was about the future. Ethan, however, felt something very different. He dressed neatly, as expected, but his thoughts were not on the arriving guests. He stood by his bedroom window, watching ranch hands move about their work. The wide field stretched far into the distance. Normally, the land gave him comfort. Today, it felt like it was watching him, waiting for his decision. By late morning, the first carriage arrived, followed by 2 more shortly after. 3 families stepped out, each carrying confidence and pride. The young women greeted Thomas with polite smiles and perfect manners. Clara Whitmore was the first. She was well-educated and spoke clearly, her words chosen carefully. She had grown up managing accounts for her father's large cattle business. She understood numbers and planning. The second was Margaret Hayes. She was cheerful, dressed elegantly, and known for her social charm. Her family owned land near the river and had strong ties in the county. The third was Evelyn Turner. Quiet but sharp, she observed everything before speaking. Her family was respected for breeding high-quality horses. Each one fit exactly the kind of future Thomas had imagined for his son. Ethan greeted them kindly. He had been raised with good manners and respect. He led them through the ranch house, showing them the large dining hall, the office where his father handled business matters, and the wide back porch that overlooked the fields. The young women asked thoughtful questions. They complimented the property. They spoke about improvements and future plans as if they already saw themselves living there. But while Ethan answered politely, something felt distant inside him. After lunch, Thomas encouraged Ethan to give each guest a personal tour of the ranch. "Let them see what they may one day help manage," he said firmly. So Ethan did. He first walked with Clara through the cattle fields. She spoke about expanding trade agreements and increasing profits. Her ideas were smart. Ethan admired her intelligence, yet the conversation felt like a business meeting. With Margaret, he walked near the river where the horses sometimes drank water. She laughed easily and talked about hosting large gatherings, bringing more social attention to the ranch. She imagined music, events, and guests from all over the county. With Evelyn, he visited the horse training grounds. She impressed him with her knowledge of breeding lines and training techniques. She had strong opinions about improving bloodlines and raising standards. Each woman had something valuable to offer, and yet none of the conversations felt natural to Ethan. He felt as though he was performing a role, speaking lines that had already been written for him. As the afternoon sun grew warmer, Ethan excused himself for a short break. He said he needed to check on something near the barns. Thomas gave him a sharp look but nodded. The moment Ethan stepped into the stables, the noise of polite conversation faded behind him. The scent of hay and horses welcomed him like an old friend. Lily was there, adjusting a saddle strap with careful hands. She had chosen to stay away from the main house that day. She believed it was not her place to be near the special guests. Still, she could not stop herself from wondering how everything was going. "You look tired," she said gently when she saw Ethan enter. He let out a quiet breath. "It's been a long day," she nodded. "Important days usually are." Ethan leaned against a wooden beam. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The silence felt comfortable, not awkward. "They're all impressive," Ethan admitted. "Smart, capable." Lily kept her eyes on the saddle. "Your father chose carefully." "Yes," Ethan said softly. "He always does." She could hear something in his voice, something unsettled. A young gray horse nearby suddenly stamped its hoof nervously. Without hesitation, Lily moved toward it. She placed her hand gently along its neck and whispered softly. The horse calmed almost immediately. Ethan watched closely. "How do you do that?" he asked. "Do what?" "Make them trust you so quickly." Lily smiled faintly. "I don't force them, I listen first." Her simple answer stayed in his mind. Back at the house, laughter floated across the yard. The guests were enjoying tea on the porch with Thomas. Everything appeared perfect from the outside. But inside the stable, something different was happening. Ethan helped Lily carry fresh hay to a nearby stall. Their hands brushed briefly and both quickly pulled away, slightly embarrassed. Neither spoke about it. "You should go back," Lily said after a while. "They're here for you." Ethan looked at her. For the first time that day, his mind felt clear. "When I'm here," he said quietly, "I don't feel like I'm being judged. I don't feel like I'm trying to impress anyone." Lily lowered her gaze. "You don't need to impress anyone." The simplicity of her words carried more comfort than all the polished compliments he had heard earlier. As evening approached, preparations for dinner began. The long dining table was decorated beautifully. Candles flickered softly. The guests dressed in elegant outfits, ready for a formal meal. Ethan returned to the house, but something had shifted inside him. He listened carefully during dinner conversations. He observed how each young woman spoke about the future. They talked about growth, reputation, and influence, but none of them spoke about the land the way Lily did. None of them spoke about the animals with quiet affection. None of them mentioned the workers by name. After dinner, music played softly in the background. Margaret suggested a short walk outside to enjoy the cool air. Ethan agreed politely. As they walked, she spoke about how beautiful the ranch would look with added decorations and social gatherings. Ethan nodded, but his thoughts drifted. He remembered how Lily had stayed late during winter storms to check on newborn calves. He remembered how she repaired broken fence posts without waiting to be asked. He remembered how she never sought praise. Inside the house, Thomas watched his son carefully. He expected to see excitement or clear preference. Instead, he saw hesitation. Later that night, when the guests retired to their rooms, Ethan stepped outside alone. The sky was full of stars again, wide and endless. He felt torn between two worlds. One world was built on expectation, family duty, and careful planning. The other was quiet, simple, and honest. From a window above the stables, Lily could see the faint glow of lights from the big house. She told herself not to think too much. She reminded herself of her position. She was just a worker, nothing more. Yet she could not ignore the way Ethan looked at her earlier, not with pity, not with superiority, but with understanding. Back on the porch, Thomas joined Ethan. "Well," his father asked firmly. "You've spent time with each of them. What do you think?" Ethan hesitated. "They are all remarkable," he answered honestly. Thomas nodded. "Good, then the choice should be easy." But Ethan did not feel that it was easy at all. Because somewhere between polite conversations and perfect manners, his heart had found itself drawn back to the quiet stable, where no one tried to impress him, and where trust was earned gently, just like calming a nervous horse. And though he did not say it out loud, he knew that his decision would not be as simple as his father believed. The next morning felt heavier than the one before. The air was still fresh, the sky wide and blue, but something had changed. The visit was no longer just a polite gathering. Now it carried pressure. Everyone knew a decision was coming. Thomas Calloway wasted no time. After breakfast, he asked Ethan to join him in the study. The room smelled of old wood and leather-bound books. Papers were neatly stacked on the desk, and a large window overlooked the fields. It was the room where important choices had always been made. Thomas closed the door behind them. "You've had time," he said firmly. "You've spoken to each of them. They are strong candidates. This ranch cannot wait forever." Ethan stood quietly, hands clasped behind his back. "I know." Thomas stepped closer to the window. "This is not only about you. It is about legacy, about respect, about everything I built." Ethan understood that better than anyone. He had grown up hearing stories of how his father started with almost nothing. Every fence post, every barn beam had meaning. The ranch was more than property, it was history. "I need your answer by the end of the week," Thomas said. "No delays." Ethan nodded, though his heart felt restless. Outside, the three young women continued enjoying their stay. Clara reviewed ranch records with interest. Margaret walked around the property speaking warmly with the house staff. Evelyn observed the horse training sessions closely. They were trying, each in her own way, but Ethan found himself drifting toward the stables again. Whispers had already begun among the ranch hands. Some noticed how often he walked in that direction. Some exchanged curious glances. Others simply continued working, pretending not to notice. Inside the stable, Lily was carefully cleaning a saddle. She had heard about the deadline. News traveled quickly on a ranch. When she saw Ethan approach, she forced herself to focus on her task. "You shouldn't be here so much," she said softly without looking up. "Why not?" he asked gently. "Because people talk." He gave a small smile. "People always talk." She finally looked at him, her expression serious. "This is different. They're here for you, important families." "You can't let rumors start." Ethan stepped closer. "Does it bother you?" Lily hesitated. She was used to carrying her feelings quietly. "It doesn't matter what I feel." But it did matter to him. Before he could respond, a sudden loud crash echoed from the far end of the barn. A young colt had broken loose from its stall. The animal was new to the ranch and easily frightened. It kicked at the wooden gate, eyes wide with fear. Two ranch hands rushed forward, but the colt panicked even more. Without hesitation, Lily moved quickly but calmly toward it. "Wait," Ethan called, worried, but she was already near the animal. She didn't shout, she didn't rush. She simply stood at a safe distance and spoke softly. Her voice was steady, almost like a quiet song. Slowly, she stepped closer, letting the colt see her hands. The animal's breathing slowed. The ranch hand stepped back, watching in surprise. Within minutes, Lily had guided the colt safely back into its stall. She secured the latch and gently stroked its neck until it fully calmed. Ethan felt something shift deeply inside him. This wasn't about social status. This wasn't about family names. This was about strength, patience, and courage shown without seeking attention. Later that afternoon, Thomas invited the guests for a horseback ride across the northern fields. It was meant to show the ranch at its finest. Ethan rode beside Clara at first. She handled her horse well and spoke about future expansion plans. Her ideas were practical and well thought out. Then he rode beside Margaret, who laughed brightly as the wind moved through her hair. She imagined summer gatherings under the open sky. With Evelyn, the conversation turned serious again, about breeding strategies and market value. Each ride was pleasant, yet none of them felt like the quiet understanding he experienced in the stable. As they reached a hill overlooking the entire ranch, Thomas slowed his horse. "This," he said proudly, "is what will belong to my son." The land stretched endlessly below them. Fields, barns, cattle, workers moving like small figures in the distance. It was beautiful. And it was heavy with responsibility. That evening, the guests dressed elegantly again for dinner. The atmosphere was more formal than before. Everyone sensed that something important was approaching. Ethan barely tasted his food. His mind replayed the moment in the stable, the frightened colt, Lily's calm strength. After dinner, Thomas stood up. "I believe it is time," he announced. "My son has had the opportunity to know each of you. Soon he will make his choice." The room grew quiet. Clara sat straight, confident. Margaret smiled gently. Evelyn remained calm but alert. Ethan's heart pounded. He glanced toward the window. From where he sat, he could barely see the faint outline of the stables in the darkness. After the guests retired for the night, Ethan walked outside alone. The sky was cloudy now, wind picking up slightly. A storm was approaching. He made his way to the stable once more. Lily was inside, checking that everything was secured before the rain began. "You should be resting," she said when she saw him. "So should you," he replied. Thunder rumbled in the distance. For a long moment neither spoke. "Ethan," she began carefully, "whatever you decide, don't let it be because of me. You have too much to lose." He stepped closer. "And what if I lose myself instead?" She looked at him, surprised by the honesty in his voice. "You belong here," he continued. "Not just because you work here, but because you care about this place. You understand it." Lily shook her head slightly. "Understanding the land doesn't change where I come from. It changes everything," he said firmly. The wind outside grew stronger. Rain began tapping against the roof. Suddenly, a loud bang echoed as one of the outer stable doors swung open in the storm. A few horses grew restless. Without thinking, both of them ran to secure it. The wind pushed hard, rain soaking through their clothes. Together, they pulled the heavy door shut and fastened it tightly. They stood there for a moment, breathless, rain dripping from their hair. In that shared struggle, something became clear to Ethan. This was partnership. Not standing in a dining hall under soft candlelight, not discussing plans in polished language, but standing side by side in the middle of a storm, protecting what mattered. The next morning the storm had passed. The sky was clear again, but the ranch buzzed with quiet tension. Thomas called for a final gathering in the main hall. The three young women stood gracefully. Their families waited with expectation. Ethan stepped forward. His voice was steady, though his heart beat fast. "I am grateful for your visit," he began respectfully. "Each of you is capable and admirable. Any ranch would be fortunate to have you." He paused. "But marriage is not only about skill or reputation. It is about trust, understanding, and standing together in both calm and storm." Thomas's jaw tightened slightly. Ethan took a breath. "I have made my choice." And though he had not yet spoken her name aloud in his heart, the decision was already clear. The room waited. The future of the Calloway Ranch hung in that single moment. The room felt still, as if even the air had stopped moving. Ethan stood tall in the center of the hall. His heart was beating fast, but his voice did not shake. "I choose Lily Harper." For a second, no one reacted. The words seemed too unexpected to understand. Then quiet whispers began. Chairs shifted. One of the visiting mothers gasped softly. Clara's confident smile faded. Margaret looked confused. Evelyn lowered her eyes, surprised but calm. Thomas Calloway did not move at all. His face became unreadable. "Lily Harper," he repeated slowly. "Yes, sir," Ethan said respectfully. "I choose Lily." The silence grew heavy. Thomas finally turned toward the ranch hand standing near the doorway. "Bring her here," he said firmly. One of the workers hurried out toward the stables. Inside the stable, Lily was brushing down a horse, unaware that everything had just changed. When the ranch hand arrived and told her she was needed in the main house, her hands froze. "Me?" she asked quietly. "Yes, now." Her stomach tightened. She wiped her hands quickly and walked toward the big house, each step feeling heavier than the last. When she entered the hall, all eyes turned toward her. She immediately felt small under their gaze. She saw the three young women dressed beautifully. She saw Thomas standing straight and serious. And she saw Ethan looking at her with steady confidence. She understood. Her first reaction was not happiness, it was fear. Thomas stepped forward. "My son claims he has chosen you," he said, his voice controlled but firm. "Is this some misunderstanding?" Lily swallowed. "No, sir." The visiting families looked insulted. One of the fathers stood up abruptly. "This is unacceptable," he said sharply. "We were invited here with respect." Thomas raised a hand, signaling for calm. Ethan stepped beside Lily. "This is my decision." The tension in the room felt almost visible. Thomas looked at his son carefully. "You would risk everything I built for this choice." Ethan met his father's eyes. "I would risk everything to build something real." The words were not spoken in anger. They were calm and clear. Thomas turned toward Lily again. "Do you understand what this means?" he asked. "Marriage into this family is not simple. It carries responsibility. It carries pressure." Lily kept her back straight. "I have carried responsibility my whole life, sir." Her answer surprised many in the room, but Thomas was not convinced. "This ranch stands on reputation," he continued. "Alliances matter. Names matter." Ethan spoke before Lily could respond. "Character matters more." That was the moment the visiting families decided to leave. Their pride would not allow them to stay. One by one, they gathered their belongings. Polite words were exchanged, but the warmth from the day before had disappeared. Soon, the large house felt empty. Only the Calloway family and ranch hands remained. Thomas dismissed everyone except Ethan and Lily. The door closed. For the first time, his voice rose slightly. "You have embarrassed this family." "I did not mean to embarrass you," Ethan said calmly. "But I will not marry for business." Thomas walked toward the window, looking out over the fields. "Do you know how hard I worked for this land? Do you know how many nights I went without sleep to protect it?" "Yes," Ethan answered. "You taught me everything." "Then why would you throw it away?" "I'm not throwing it away," Ethan replied. "I'm protecting its future." Thomas turned sharply. "By ignoring alliances." "By choosing someone who understands this land," Ethan said. Thomas looked at Lily again. "And did you encourage this?" Lily shook her head immediately. "No, sir, I would never put myself above this ranch." Her voice was steady, but her hands trembled slightly. Thomas noticed. "You would walk away if I asked you to?" he questioned. Lily hesitated for just a second. "If it protects the ranch, yes." Ethan looked at her in shock. "No." But she continued softly, "This place gave me work when I had nothing. I won't be the reason it suffers." Her words were honest, not dramatic, not selfish. Thomas said nothing more. The days that followed were tense. Word spread quickly across the county. Some people laughed at the story. Others shook their heads. A few quietly admired Ethan's courage, though they would not say it publicly. Business partners began asking careful questions. Thomas felt the pressure growing. At the ranch, however, work continued. Cattle still needed feeding. Fences still needed repair. Horses still required care. Lily returned to her duties without complaint. She did not walk proudly. She did not act differently. In fact, she tried to stay out of sight as much as possible. Ethan noticed. "You don't have to hide," he told her one evening. "I'm not hiding," she replied gently. "I'm working." But inside, she worried. She worried about the strain between father and son. She worried about becoming a burden. Thomas, meanwhile, watched everything closely. He noticed how Lily arrived before sunrise as always. He noticed how she checked on a pregnant mare late at night without being asked. He noticed how she treated every worker with respect. Still, pride kept him distant. Then something unexpected happened. News arrived from a neighboring ranch. A sickness had begun spreading among horses in the area. Several animals had fallen weak. Owners were concerned. Thomas immediately ordered inspections. Within 2 days, one of the younger horses at Cowboy Ranch showed early signs of illness. Panic moved quickly. Losing even a few horses would damage the ranch's standing. The ranch hands gathered, unsure of the next steps. Lily stepped forward carefully. "I've seen this before," she said quietly. Thomas looked at her. "You have?" "Yes, sir. Years ago at a smaller farm where I worked briefly. We isolated the sick animals immediately and adjusted feed and water sources." Thomas studied her face. There was no doubt in her eyes. "What do you suggest?" he asked. It was the first time he had asked her advice. She gave clear instructions: separate stalls, clean water buckets, fresh bedding, careful observation. Thomas nodded slowly. "Do it." For the next several days, Lily barely rested. Ethan stayed beside her, helping wherever needed. Together, they followed every precaution. The illness did not spread. While other ranches suffered heavy losses, Cowboy Ranch remained stable. Neighbors began asking how Thomas had managed it. He answered honestly. "We acted early." But privately, he knew who had recognized the signs first. One evening, after the situation was under control, Thomas walked alone toward the stables. He found Lily sitting on a small stool, gently feeding the recovering horse. "You were right," he said simply. She looked up, surprised. "You protected this ranch," he continued. "I just did what anyone would do," she replied. "No," Thomas said quietly, "not anyone." There was a long pause. "I misjudged you," he admitted. Those words did not come easily. Lily lowered her head respectfully. "You were protecting your life's work, I understand." Thomas looked around the stable. The place smelled of hay and clean wood. It was peaceful. "I built this ranch with strength," he said slowly, "but perhaps it also needs heart." Lily did not know how to respond. From a distance, Ethan watched the conversation with hope rising inside him. Thomas turned to leave, then stopped. "If you are going to stand beside my son," he said firmly, "you must be ready for hard years. Success does not come easily." "I've never expected easy," Lily answered. For the first time, Thomas gave a small nod of respect. The tension that once filled the ranch began to fade. It was not replaced by celebration yet, but it was replaced by understanding. And slowly, the Callaway Ranch started to realize that legacy was not only about family name. Sometimes, it was about courage shown quietly, when no one was watching. The days after the sickness passed felt different across the Callaway Ranch. The air seemed lighter. not because the work had become easier, but because something unspoken had shifted. The tension that once followed every step between the house and the stables slowly began to disappear. Thomas Calloway was not a man who changed quickly. He did not give long speeches or dramatic apologies, but his actions began to speak in quiet ways. One morning, before sunrise, he walked toward the stables earlier than usual. The sky was painted in soft shades of pink and gold. He found Lily already awake, checking the horses one by one. She moved carefully, making notes in a small, worn notebook she kept in her apron pocket. Thomas watched without interrupting. "You've been keeping records?" he finally asked. Lily looked up, slightly startled. "Yes, sir. It helps me track feeding patterns and behavior changes." He stepped closer and examined the notebook. The pages were filled with neat handwriting dates, small observations, feeding adjustments. "You taught yourself this?" he asked. She nodded. "I read books when I can, and I observe." Thomas handed the notebook back slowly. "Come to the office this afternoon." Her heart skipped. "Yes, sir." When she entered the office later that day, Ethan was already there. He gave her a small, encouraging smile. Thomas stood behind his desk. "If you are going to be part of this ranch's future," he said calmly, "then you need to understand more than the stables." He spread several papers across the desk: supply orders, veterinary reports, financial summaries. "Sit," he said. That single word carried meaning. It was not a command. It was an invitation. Lily sat carefully, unsure at first. Thomas began explaining how the ranch managed expenses, how livestock sales were negotiated, how weather patterns affected planning. She listened closely. She asked thoughtful questions, not too many but enough to show she was truly paying attention. Ethan watched with quiet pride. Weeks passed, and the changes continued. Thomas began including Lily in certain discussions with ranch hands. At first, the workers were unsure how to react, but when she spoke, she remained practical and focused. She did not try to prove herself loudly. She simply offered solutions when needed. One afternoon, a worker approached Thomas privately. "She knows her work," he admitted. "We respect that." Those simple words meant more than praise from wealthy neighbors. As autumn arrived, Ethan and Lily began planning a small wedding. There would be no grand celebration, no large crowd from distant counties. Just close friends, ranch hands, and a few neighbors who had remained supportive. Thomas surprised them both by offering the wide field near the old oak tree as the ceremony location. "It's where your mother and I stood," he said quietly to Ethan one evening. It was the closest he had come to sharing something personal in years. On the day of the wedding, the sky was clear and bright. The ranch looked peaceful, surrounded by golden fields ready for harvest. Lily wore a simple white dress. It was not expensive, but it fit her perfectly. Her hair was gently tied back, and there was a calm glow on her face. Ethan wore his best suit, though he still looked like the rancher he had always been. As Lily walked toward him under the old oak tree, the workers stood nearby, smiling warmly. They had seen her work in rain, snow, and heat. They had watched her care for animals and support Ethan during difficult days. This moment felt earned. Thomas stood beside his son. When Ethan looked at him, Thomas gave a small nod. It was enough. The ceremony was simple. Vows were spoken clearly, not with fancy words but with honesty. "I promise to stand beside you in every season," Ethan said. "And I promise to protect what we build together," Lily answered. When they exchanged rings, the wind moved gently through the fields, as if the land itself was witnessing the promise. Life did not suddenly become perfect after that day. There were still challenges. A harsh winter tested their planning. Prices in the market shifted unexpectedly. Repairs were needed more often than hoped, but now decisions were made together. Lily introduced small improvements in the stables: better feeding schedules, cleaner storage systems, early health checks. The horses grew stronger. Buyers began noticing the difference. Ethan focused on expanding trade carefully, not through flashy alliances, but through steady reliability. Thomas slowly stepped back from daily operations, not because he was forced to, but because he began to trust what he saw. One evening he stood again on the porch where he had once demanded his son choose wisely. Ethan joined him. "You were right about one thing," Thomas admitted. Ethan looked surprised. "What's that?" "A ranch needs more than strong fences and good cattle," Thomas said. "It needs people who care about it deeply." Ethan smiled slightly. "You taught me that too." Thomas did not reply, but his expression softened. Over time, neighboring ranches began noticing how well the Callaway Ranch was doing. They saw healthy horses, organized operations, and workers who remained loyal. Some who had once doubted Ethan's decision now quietly respected it. Lily never forgot where she came from. She continued rising early, often before anyone else. She treated every task with the same care as before. The only difference was that now, when she walked through the main house, she did not feel like she needed to lower her eyes. She belonged. Years later, when Thomas finally handed full leadership to Ethan, there was no dramatic announcement, just a signed document and a firm handshake. "You'll do better than I did," Thomas said quietly. Ethan shook his head. "We'll do our best." Thomas looked toward Lily, who stood nearby reviewing stable records. "Yes," he corrected himself, "you will." The ranch continued to grow, not in loud or boastful ways, but in steady strength. Children eventually ran across the same fields where difficult decisions had once been made. The old oak tree remained standing tall, a reminder of promises kept. People in the county no longer told the story as gossip. They told it as proof. Proof that legacy is not only about family name. Proof that courage sometimes means standing against expectation. Proof that true partnership is built during storms, not during celebrations. And whenever someone new joined the ranch and asked about its history, they would hear about the day the rancher made his son choose a bride, and how he chose the orphan stable girl. But by then, she was no longer known as the orphan. She was known as the woman who helped shape the future of the Callaway Ranch. And the land, stretching wide under open skies, continued to thrive because of a choice made not from pressure, but from the heart.